Welcome to the Big Change the Film interview series, and my name is Jason Cohen. I personally have lost over 120 pounds, and every week I chat with inspiring individuals who've also lost significant amounts of weight, hear their stories, and pass along some of that inspiration to others. Including today's guest and myself, the total pounds lost is now up to 12,908 pounds. If you've been enjoying this interview series, there's a couple ways that you can help support it. Number one is free, and that's by rating us on iTunes. That just helps others to see what I'm doing and increases visibility, and I really appreciate each and every review. The second way is I do sell t-shirts, and that directly impacts the film, it directly impacts the interview series, and 100% of the proceeds from those t-shirt sales go back into the interview series and the film. This week's guest is Daniel Shuman. Daniel's lost 171 pounds. After the birth of his second child, Daniel decided that he needed to change his lifestyle for the future of his family. After being asked off of a ride at Universal Studios, he decided that a change was in order. He's completely changed his life around. He's lost, as I said, 171 pounds. He told me that his relationship with his family's changed. He's more present with his kids, and he's able to do more. We have a fantastic conversation about his journey, and thanks so much for tuning in. I'm here with Daniel Shuman. I actually found him on Instagram, saw his before and after picture, which looks absolutely phenomenal, and decided to reach out, kind enough to sit down and have a conversation with me. So Daniel, thanks for the time. Maybe we could just start off with a little bit about yourself, where you're from, where you live, and how many pounds you've lost.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you for having me and for taking interest in my story. It's really exciting to be a part of this. I grew up in Pennsylvania, in the outskirts of Philadelphia. I've been living in New York for most of my adult life, and I think my total weight loss, if you count, my highest to now is about 171 altogether. I live in Queens, New York now.
Right on. Yeah, it's a few pounds. Not to say that it's not the same for everyone, but yours is one that truly you do look younger in your after picture than you do in your before picture.
Oh, thank you. I was concerned about that. I was concerned with, how loose things are going to look. Is that going to age me? But I agree, and I appreciate the compliment. And this whole thing's been a giant blessing for me, and it's been great.
That's awesome. So you, I think I read in the article on Yahoo that you had struggled with your weight for most of your life. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. For as long as I remember, I was obese. As a child, I was always overweight. I was always like off the charts obese. And it really, after I got married, is when it really got really out of control. I mean, I was definitely extremely obese before then, but then it got even worse at that point.
And were people around you growing up also overweight, like family, friends, community, or were you kind of, by yourself in terms of your size?
So as far as my family goes, they've all had weight to lose. No one to the extent that I did. I guess just the way my genetics worked out and my habits. And then socially, I definitely, there was always a couple of other big kids in my class and school and guys that I were friendly with, but I was always the biggest guy around. Generally, if I was somewhere, I was the biggest guy in the room.
Wow. Yeah. And then, I'm just thinking you'd been weight since you were really small, so maybe it's hard to completely figure it out. But when you look back, was there anything in particular, like food-wise or lifestyle-wise, that you're just like, I was addicted to this, I always ate this? Was there anything that kind of sticks out?
Yeah, I loved all food. I still do. It kind of worked for me that I like vegetables and healthy food as well. So, I kind of was an equal opportunity eater. But definitely I was drinking a ton of soda, candy. As bad as you can get. It was pretty brutal. I think about like what I do, especially at night, like sitting and watching a TV show or something. It would just be a 2-liter bottle of soda and a bag of candy or chips or something. It was just always looking for that stimulation and made some pretty poor choices.
You said your weight ramped up when you got married. What happened? What changed for you?
I think I don't want to misrepresent marriage for myself. Marriage has been a beautiful thing for me, and I've been very fulfilled and happy from it. But along with that, definitely came stress. Having to have other people responsible for that you're responsible for. Eventually having kids. And the financial constraints that come with that. So it was definitely a little bit more stress in life. Also when I was single, you skip meals a lot more often. With more stability, in a marriage, it's kind of you're cooking something every night, and I was trying to make something special and something to really look forward to, at the end of the day, and just went a little overboard, very overboard. So.
Yeah. And then, did you and your now wife ever have discussions about any concerns about you as far as your weight, your health, any of that kind of stuff? Was that ever a
Yeah,
consideration?
I mean, it's something that we struggled with every day. We probably talked about it every day. I mean, my wife, she did join me on this process, but she, didn't have anywhere near the amount to lose that I did, and she was always extremely supportive and never, put me down or anything like that. But it was something that we talked about a lot, and we're always constantly trying to game plan to see what could we do, what could work, and with this dream, like, yeah, one day I'm going to lose the weight, I'm going to do it, and then eventually it happened, thankfully.
Along the way, because I know, it sounds like you were married at least for a little while. You had kids before really you kind of made a bit of a difference and got to where you are now. But what did those conversations during those times look like, where it was just a dream and it was nothing more? What were y'all talking about? What were y'all planning? And why did none of that happen previously?
So, there was definitely a lot of times I'd get on the wagon, I'd plan something I'd do, whether it was a Weight Watchers program or, I very strongly considered doing a keto program at one point. I was just trying to, like, find that thing that would work for me. But it always came down to, like, just knowing that whatever I was doing, if I was just following a program that would end one day, I needed something that was more of a lifestyle change than anything else. And I always loved the idea of getting more natural. I'm very into cooking. I'm very into seeing where ingredients come from. And, growing up in Pennsylvania, I gained a tremendous appreciation for seeing how things grow, things are made. I loved going to farms. I did a summer camp as a kid in Pennsbury Manor. You just would see, how things were grown. You see what a real garden was like. And I kind of was always really into nature. So I always thought that would kind of be the path that I would go down when it would work eventually, and just figuring it out. It took some time, but once it clicked, it clicked.
And at your highest, you were 355, I believe, was your
Yeah.
highest recorded weight. What did life look like for you then? Because I mean, that is a lot of extra weight to be carrying around. I'm thinking there's got to be some struggles that you have to have when you're that big.
Oh, there was a ton. It was every day. I mean, just the emotional part of it, just being constantly self-conscious. Everywhere you are, you think that people are looking at you. People probably were looking at me. And there was a lot of things that I was limited. I work in the field of. I've done a lot of volunteer work, and in my professional life, working with people with disabilities. And I really, thinking back at it, felt like I was living life with a disability. There was a lot of things I couldn't do, a lot of things that I thought I couldn't do that maybe I could have done, but I held myself back from. In the Yahoo article, it mentions that I had gone to Universal Studios in Florida and got on a ride, this Harry Potter ride that I was excited to go on, and I had to be asked to get off the ride because I was too big for the restraint to close safely. And there was just so much, whether it was sports or wanting to do some sort of physical activity, jet skiing, water skiing, skydiving. Whenever something like that would come up, friends were going out to do something fun. I would always be like, "Oh, that's not for me. I can't do something like that." Or they'd go skiing, something like that. It always felt like that was something I couldn't do. And part of that probably was me holding myself back a little bit, but also it was just I was that big that there were things that I couldn't do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you mentioned there, living with the emotional, thinking about are people looking at me, are they watching me? I think you had a quote in there that said, "Not a day went by that I didn't hate my body and fear for my health."
Yeah.
Did you have anything? You seem like you're a fairly young person. Do you have anything health wise that you knew was going on during that time?
Thankfully, no. I mean, part of it was I wasn't really seeing a doctor at that time, so I wouldn't necessarily know. There wasn't any huge symptoms of anything that way, so I don't know if there were things going on behind the scenes that I didn't know about. But I'd start to feel like low blood sugar at times during the day, and I didn't know. I figured it was only, it was only logical that I was getting towards some sort of having some sort of issue with either diabetes or something related to that. I started noticing little floaties in my eyes at times. So that was like, okay, yeah, this is starting to catch up to me. Thankfully, there's been nothing major that's happened to me, but it's only a matter of time, I think, at this point. I'm 30 years old. I was 29 when I started this, so thankfully, I think I'm young enough that I hopefully have avoided major issues from it. But you never know, and I'm just happy to be on top of it now. Hopefully to reverse whatever damage I've done.
And it sounds like to me you kind of had a bunch of things possibly happen back to back, and then it sounded like I think I saw something. At the birth of your second child, you realize you need to change your lifestyle for the future of your family. What all culminated that caused you to kind of really take a stab and get to where you are today?
So yeah, it was definitely the birth of my second son. I don't know why it took my second son being born, but it just got a lot more real for me then. And I just remember sitting there in the hospital. He's this little infant, and thinking this kid relies on me, his brother relies on me, and I'm really not being responsible with my life right now the way I'm living. And if I die or if I'm incapacitated in some way, what's going to be with them? There's no security net here. I'm responsible for them, and so that was really like the big impetus to do it. And then I had watched this documentary called Fed Up, and that really gave me a little bit of a kick in the rear of like what type of avenues to look down, and it kind of got me angry at the food industry, and it was just a really good motivation for me at that time. I was pretty much ready to start. It was going to be some sort of program or some sort of plan at that point, whether it was just straight calorie counting or whatever it was. Like I was ready, but that really was a good motivator to start. Like, okay, I'm starting this today, and I'm going that route. I'm going the natural, route. And, I'm sure we'll get into it more, but just looking into those type of things.
And I think I saw, you kind of mentioned it there, but like you were pretty, at least from the article, it sounded like you were pretty upset or, frustrated with the information that was now presented to you through Fed Up, about the food industry and whatnot. What was it that really surprised you or really stuck out or really, kind of rubbed you the wrong way about what you learned?
What made me the most angry, I would say, in the documentary was learning of where food companies would sneak sugar into, and how it really is an addictive product. And learning that they would put it in baby formula, like, blew my mind, and it really upset me. And I was thinking that, now I just had a young baby then, and to think that I'm perpetuating this cycle and giving him baby formula without even realize, you think baby formula, that's like as basic as you can get with food, besides for nursing. That that how could you be messing up there? And then to notice that they put sugar in baby formula, like, that makes no sense, and it made me really angry. And just thinking, like, there are chances are they're going to be predisposed to the things that I'm predisposed to, and if, I'm just keeping this cycle going. And you want better for your kids. You want your kids to grow up without the struggles that you've had, or at least with some sort of insight to it. So that was really like the thing that angered me the most, I would say.
And then what did you, you watched a documentary, you're still in the 335-pound range or whatever, what was the path forward? What did those next, those first days, first weeks, first months look like for you to kind of make sure that you didn't fall back?
The beginning was just cutting out anything processed, any added sugar or processed foods. So I was still eating, like a fair amount of animal proteins at that point. But I just wanted like, I was trying to find a clean diet, if such a thing exists. And I think it does. But, trying to get as clean as possible, as close to nature as possible, as the way that we're meant to be eating. And so that was really it. It was just like shopping at the ends of the supermarket, just the produce section, the meat section, a little bit of the dairy, and trying to keep it as natural as possible. And that took me pretty far initially, until I discovered whole food plant-based diets, and that really kicked it into overdrive.
Yeah. And then how long did it take before, um, how long did it take you to kind of really change your mindset when it came to food? Because, I'm thinking you're going from eating a tremendous amount of sugar, drinking a tremendous amount of soda, candy, all that kind of stuff. How long did it take for you to kind of crowd all that out? Was it a pretty quick thing, or was it kind of transitional over time?
It was actually pretty quick. I was able to like kind of make those foods seem off-putting to me. It was kind of that I was fueled by anger. It's like a weird place to be fueled from, I guess, but it really was. And I was like, I would just look at that stuff like, oh, this is something trying to trick me. This is something trying to get me, and I don't want no part of that. And that's really what it was. Like right away, I really like stayed pretty far away from everything like that for a while. So yeah, I didn't really do that in stages too much. It was pretty much a clean cut.
Wow, that's awesome. And then, I think you mentioned in the article that you had a tremendous amount of support, both from your immediate family and then beyond. What did that kind of look like? Because I know for some people, maybe they're hearing this and they have a spouse that they're trying to help, but they don't know how to help them, or maybe they're somebody who's trying to figure out how to get their, spouse on board because they're the person who's trying to make a change. Like, what did that look like for you, and how did that kind of help you along?
Oh, it was a tremendous help for me. I mean, firstly, for my wife, my family, my wife did not need to lose. She just had a baby, so I think everyone has a little bit of weight to lose after a baby, but she was not an obese person by any stretch of the imagination. And for me to just say, oh, I don't want these things around anymore, and for her to be like, yeah, of course, like we're getting rid of it, we're not having anything around anymore. I'm doing this with you. That I can't imagine doing it another way. I mean, if I was surrounded by bad foods all the time, I don't know how successful I would be. I think I was pretty motivated at that time, but it gets to that point late at night, you just want to grab something, and when you don't have those bad things around, you have good options around. It just made it a lot easier. And then just socially, just getting the encouragement from, be it strangers, I just neighbors of mine, people I wouldn't even know in my building, would cheer me on. They'd see me go out with my bike and like, oh, you go, man, you do it. You look great. You're looking good, looking good. And just like little by little, getting all that encouragement for everyone. And my friends could not have been more supportive. I had a friend that saw me losing weight and paid for a gym membership for me. Like really like a ton of outpouring of support, and really made it so much more doable and enjoyable. While even still today, I still get encouragement from people. It hasn't been that long that I think it's still exciting for people, and it's really been amazing to see the effect that it's had on people, and then how their support has had the effect on me. It's just been great.
That's great to hear. And then, you mentioned the bike. I think I saw you mention, you first off started by just walking, but even just simply walking was difficult for you. You just didn't have much stamina. What did that look like initially, and how did things progress when it came to, being physically active?
Yeah. So for every part of this, for me, I've had to find things that I've enjoyed in order to get motivated to do it. So when it came to walking, I would have to I would try to find destinations that I wanted to check out. I was visiting my parents in New Jersey, and I was reading this biography on Alexander Hamilton at the time, and it talks about this time he spent at Liberty Hall, which is near where my parents lived, where he lived for a little while. I was like, oh, I want to check this place out, and let me walk down there and see it. And it was a little bit of a walk, and I'd walk down there and walk around. It was just, it was that experiencing nature again, just exploring a little bit, and I was enjoying what I was doing, so I liked it. I didn't see it as a task. And it was the same thing with biking too. I live in Rockaway, Queens. I live a couple blocks from the ocean, and we have this beautiful new promenade boardwalk. And first I got a beach cruiser, and I would just go out there and see how far I can get on the boardwalk. And I just loved it. I still love it. It's something I look forward to doing. And I knew that if it was something that I looked forward to doing and enjoyed doing, that I'd be more motivated to do it on a regular basis. And because I was all about trying to make lasting changes, not just doing something. You can muscle through things. I muscled through diet programs plenty of times and lost a little bit of weight, but inevitably would fall back into my old habits. So I was really looking to really get in there and change the habits.
And then, you talked about in the article as well that throughout this process, I don't know if it was intentional or it was unintentional, but your emotional state changed as well as your physical body. Can you talk about that a little bit and what you
Definitely.
mean by that?
Yeah. Part of the struggle I was having initially was an emotional struggle, and I'd finally felt like it was time that I was going to deal with it. Thankfully there was no major issues that it caused, but I felt it creeping up. I was getting more depressed, and I knew that I wanted to address it, and I figured that if I go to a doctor, that any self-respecting doctor would tell me first lose weight, and then let's see where it goes. It's not, it wasn't in this crisis situation where something immediate needed to happen, but I couldn't imagine. I think that being tired and being depressed are related, and being that obese, carrying around that much weight every day has to have an effect on your mental state. Um, so I figured that was the first step to go. Let's see how it gets after that, and then see what other measures need to be taken. Um, thank God that worked.
And can you contrast, the depression, the tiredness, all that kind of stuff? Like what is different emotionally about you now?
It's definitely different. I definitely don't find that I get depressed anywhere near as much as I did. And then if things start to creep up, I'm able to get over it a lot quicker. Whereas in the past, bad thoughts would come up. You'd kind of ruminate over it for a while and get into that cycle where things get darker and darker. And now I'm able to snap out of it a little bit easier. I find, and also like the lifestyle has helped me find outlets that when I start feeling those things creeping up, I can go do something, and more often than not that will help treat the symptom. Um, start feeling better once I do something a little productive. Like when I go out for a run or go out for a bike ride. I mean, there's very few feelings that are as good afterwards coming back, and especially if you didn't want to do it beforehand. And like running, for example, I don't naturally love running, but when I get out there and do it, and I come back afterwards, I mean, it feels so good. It feels like you've accomplished something. It's a high. It really, we'll talk about runner's high, and I buy into that big time. It's really, for me at least, it's been a real thing.
Yeah, it's hard for me to be in a bad mood when I get back from a run or a bike ride. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, things aren't that bad. It's like free therapy almost.
It really is, especially. I'm lucky to live in a nice place where I just go out to the ocean, especially like this time of day. If I go out, in the sun setting, or if I go out early in the morning and the sun rising, it's so beautiful, and it's such a great experience. That's really hard to be in a bad mood after that. I totally get that.
Yeah. One to contrast that, comparatively speaking, my guess is you probably weren't jumping out of bed before and you were, eating candy instead of taking a bike ride or run at sunset. So,
Yeah,
uh,
and part of it was, I was never, I would while I acted complacent, I never really was. Like, it was something that really did bother me every day, and I kind of felt like I was losing a struggle every day. And, I'd ultimately fail at the end of the day. I sometimes would have a great day, and then night would come, and it'd stuff my face, and the morning would come, and you'd feel like a failure. And it wasn't a fun way to live. That in itself was really hard.
yeah. And, I think you also talked about a little bit how your relationship with your wife and your kids has changed. You mind just discussing that a little bit?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I'm definitely a lot more present, especially with my kids. I could do a lot more with my kids. I could play a lot more with my kids. I mean, just sitting on the floor with my son doing a puzzle beforehand would be a challenge. And, I'd have to either tell him, oh, let's go sit at the table so I could sit in the chair. And it kind of seen that little disappointment in his face hurt. And it's just nice now to kind of now I'm pushing him more to go out and do things and to ride his bike and just we run around and play sports, and it's definitely had a huge impact on him. On both my sons, but especially the older one of a 5.5-year-old who he's just a lot of fun. and, what I can do with him now, comparatively to the past, I mean, it's night and day.
That's great. And then I think, you talked about, you still have your struggles. Life is not perfect and unicorns and rainbows. So, what do you still struggle with now, and how do you handle that differently than you would have previously?
So I definitely still have bad eating days. It happens. I generally eat a whole food plant based diet. That's not to say I don't deviate from that at times. I don't indulge at times. There's days where whether it's planned or not, that I slip up, or I don't necessarily view it that way anymore as slipping up, but I have days where I eat poorer than I should. What's different now is I can get back on the horse. It's in the past it was always like this big mountain that you had to overcome, and now that I feel like not that I felt that I've overcome it in a way. I don't feel that I'm cured. I don't feel that I've that this is over, that I've won or anything like that. But now it's much more manageable. So if I have a bad day, I know what to do to get back on track. I know that my default mode is a lot better than it was in the past. So I get right back on track much quicker, and I could see it as an indulgence as opposed to like throwing this whole thing in the garbage now when it's done. It's not the way I eat 99% of the time. And if I do have a day where, I get tempted and indulge a little bit too much, the next day I'm right back on it. And just back to my default mode.
And it also sounded like planning became important for you, just in terms
Absolutely.
of, what does that look like for y'all now?
Yeah, like every Sunday I'm at Costco, but, filling up my cart with produce. I'm planning out menus, usually the Saturday night or Sunday. And that's a huge part for me. Having healthy foods around, having meals planned, and also just getting excited about the meals. I find it really important. I love to cook. And it's a big part of it. It's kind of like with the exercising, where I had to find something that excited me, that I'd look forward to. It's the same thing now with my meals. Like I look forward to cooking some cool recipe that I found somewhere, whether it's online or in a cookbook, and that gets me into it, and it keeps me honest. And I definitely think that planning and following through with the planning is huge, and I don't think I would have been as successful without it. Because most of the time when I was eating poorly, it was out of lack of preparation. It was just grabbing what was quick and easy, that's going to make me feel good for an hour or two. To get, let's say I'm working and I'm starting to feel a little low sugar or whatever it was. If I have a 20-ounce Coke or something, I'd be right back into it and fine, because that was quick and that was easy. But if I plan something, I have, I'm cooking either the night before or in the morning before I go to work, or just making sure I have enough, even just quick things to grab, that makes it so much more doable.
That's great. And then I know, when we were talking before we started the interview, and also in communication, your faith's really important to you. And I'm just
Definitely.
thinking there's probably elements of food that probably goes along with that, and that, there's a history of
Totally.
that. So how have you kind of navigated that? How do you maintain your identity, but yet, some of the foods that you eat, maybe you ate before, maybe that's still around you, might not be things that you eat anymore.
Yeah, and that's a huge part of it. My faith and my religion is, I mean, so much of that surrounds food. We have, I keep what we call Shabbos. Every Saturday we don't use electricity or work or anything like that. And there's big meals and everything surrounds these meals. And I go to synagogue on Saturday. At the end, we have what's called a kiddush, where there's food and alcohol and everyone's partying and it's fun. And that's definitely been hard to navigate. And for me, it's been about finding things that like filling up on vegetables, filling up on good things, but also kind of reevaluating what it's all about. And the way I see it now, like my diet, without getting into too specifics, and if you don't want to, I eat mostly whole food, plant based, and then I have a little bit of animal proteins on the weekends. So like for me, that kind of goes hand in hand with the religion part of it. This concept of having meat and fish on Shabbos on the weekends, and to me that kind of makes a little bit more sense. It maybe that's the way, if you are consuming those type of products, I definitely don't think that they should be consumed, in the amounts that we're used to, that Americans are used to consuming. And so to see it as like that special occasion thing, it kind of helps with when I do indulge, that makes it an occasion. It's something, that's a holiday, the family's together. There have been social scenes where you're at a meal, you're at something, and everyone's eating something, and you kind of feel a little of an outcast certain ways. But I've been able to. I mean, there's always something that I could have. There's always vegetable. Thankfully, now I think the public opinion on health is is shifting in this direction a little bit, and so you could always find things. But definitely been a challenge, and I think there's a lot. I know my culture definitely has a lot to grow in that regard. When it comes to healthy eating and responsible eating and all of that. I'm trying to do my part in that too. I'm trying to affect change where I can.
That's great. I'm sure the fact that when they if they knew you at 355 pounds and they know you now, and you just tell them you want some carrots or whatever, they can't. It's hard to argue with that.
I'll get some negative feedback for the most part. I mean, people have been overwhelmingly amazing with it, but you still have here and there people say things, and like you mentioned, your identity, and that was something I was concerned about beforehand. And I still have people occasionally that will ask either me or a friend of mine, like, "Oh, does Dan still have his personality? Is he still fun?" And for me, that's an easy answer. Like, I think I'm a lot more fun to be around now than I was. With all those issues that being obese, that went along with being obese. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that I'm a much more pleasant person to be around now than I was a year and a half ago. I definitely, and it was something I had to come to terms with in the beginning of thinking like, oh, is this going to change my personality? People like me because I'm the funny fat guy, and it was kind of having that confidence to be like, no, people like me because they like me, and anyone that really cares about me knows that this is bettering me, bettering myself, and there's no way that anyone with a brain would prefer the old me, compared to this. At least the way I see it.
Yeah, no, for sure. Well, looking back in the rearview mirror, what about this journey has surprised you? You sitting here today, you're in the low 180s. You look younger than you did before. You're now able to play on the ground with your kids. I know it's a lot has changed, but what were you not expecting about this that now today, is a reality?
There's a few things. First off, I'm really pleased with how quickly it went. Like, it went to me, it went a lot easier than I thought it was going to. It really wasn't this tremendous struggle. And that's not to say I don't struggle from time to time. But in general, it hasn't been this battle every day. In the past when I did diets and programs, things like that, it felt like every day was like this huge battle of the wills. And this really was just about the preparation and the planning and surrounding myself, and it really wasn't such a big deal. And just the how quickly it went. I mean, to lose all that weight in about a year, I never expected that it would take that would be that quick. So that's been great. And then just to see that I don't miss the old stuff so much. I really don't miss junk food all that much. I'm able to really see it now, like you said, in the rearview mirror, and it doesn't really appeal to me that much anymore. It doesn't. I always thought this is horrible. Like I was going to miss it. I was going to be so deprived and, just upset all the time. And it really just isn't like that.
Yeah, my problem now is my eyes are bigger sometimes than my stomach, and I'll eat way too much watermelon and kale chips, and then have a stomach ache. It's a lot.
Totally.
It's a lot better than the sugar hangover.
Oh yeah. And that's right. I know if I overeat in a day, my body's gonna tell me, and I'm gonna feel like garbage. And
yeah.
And that's a pretty good deterrent to not do it the next time.
Yeah. What would you say to somebody who's at the beginning of this journey, who's hearing your story, and it's resonating with them, and they're ready to make that change for themselves? What advice would you give them on day one?
So I would give them to educate yourself, find out what works, find out about nutrition, to learn about whatever it is you want to do. I think everyone can benefit from learning about nutrient density in foods. And ultimately, it's just sticking with it. Whatever it is you decide to do, stay with it. If you have a bad day, a bad week, even a bad month, stay with it. Don't give up on it, because it really is attainable. I don't think too many people had worse habits than I did, or were in a worse place than me. I mean, obviously everything's relative, but it was pretty bad. And it's a cliche, I guess. If I can do it, anyone can. But I really do feel that way. I think I was pretty entrenched in a pretty severe food addiction, and I don't think I'm special. I don't think I'm any different than anybody else. It's just finding that motivation, wanting to do it, and doing it, and sticking with it, and not being complacent. I think it's, while it's important to stay in a healthy mindset, and it's important not to put yourself down, I do think it's important, though, not to glorify being obese, and to recognize that it's something that you can change and you should change, and it's in your control to change. That could be painful, I think, to take on, but I do think it's important. I think it's just you owe it to yourself to not live that way. I mean, I really, when I talk to people, almost every day, I have someone who approached me who is struggling with something like that, and a lot of times we're in a place very close to where I was, or maybe even a little worse than where I was, and I feel a tremendous amount of sympathy for them, and it's just I want to help them so badly. Like I want them to get out of it, and I just want that message to kind of get across that you can do it, and it really is something you can break free from, because it's such a terrible way to live.
Yeah, those are very true words. If you could go back in time and have a conversation with yourself when you were still 355 pounds and give yourself some kind words or some encouragement, or maybe not some not so kind words, what would you go back and tell that person?
I wish I would get to myself when I was a little younger, so I could have enjoyed my teenage years a little more, and just explain how I did it. I guess it was really like learning about the whole food plant-based diet, like just really spoke to me, and really like once I learned about it, it was like, oh, I could totally do this. Like this isn't so crazy for me. So I wish I could tell my younger self about that a little bit, and just about like filling up on healthy foods, and there's so much I could have been doing younger that I wasn't. I can't complain. Relatively young when I did this, thankfully. But yeah, I wish I would have told a younger me to get on it. But that's that. I learned from it.
For sure. And then if people are, hearing your story and want to follow along with you, what's the best way for people to keep in touch and see what you have going on?
Yeah, so I have an Instagram, Daniel's Manual, one word. I post a lot of my meals, what I've been eating, or just some random things I think are cool. There's definitely some indulgences up in there as well, so don't take everything up there as gospel of what you should be eating. But hopefully it's evident, the balance of what I'm eating and the type of choices that I've been making on a daily basis.
Awesome. Well, I'll include a link to that. And Daniel, congratulations on the incredible journey. And I appreciate the time. I'll look forward to keeping up with you. And glad to hear things are so well, and you'll be around for a long time for those kiddos. And you'll be you'll be on the next Harry Potter ride as well.
I hope so. I hope so too. Thank you so much.
All right. Have a great night.
You too.